The graduate course is an opportunity for teachers to commit themselves for the year to diving more deeply into the brain-based research and the impact it can have on their own personal practices and the practices at the school.
We come here with great spirits and hope and thankfulness, gratitude for your being here and taking on the work.
They dive much more deeply into the brain-based research.
What it does highlight is this gap between if you're of a fixed mindset or a growth mindset, that difference in scores. So our ability to fade this one out and make it mirror this is pretty profound.
One of the things we focus on with M3 is to take what we're learning and discussing and to then say, okay, now let's apply it right away. Stand up, that'll help.
Stand up.
And you want just a little bit of space because you're going to put your arms out. What you want to do is you want to take, in one hand, you want your thumb and your forefinger to be connected. In the other hand, you want your thumb and your pinky to be connected. And see how effectively and quickly you can do it. So, let's see.
What were you saying to yourself? Were you saying, oh no, there's no way I'm going to get this one down? Or were you saying, ooh, this is awesome and challenge? So it's the beginning of that introduction of what's that internal voice and turning up the volume on that internal voice that gives you a message for fixed or growth.
And so while it begins with their individual practices, it then grows to they are helping their colleagues and the school as a whole shift the teaching practices. Okay, so with your free write responses in hand, we are going to form a big circle around the outside of the tables.
So something I'm excited about is that to think about real equity in education and like thinking of this as a field leveler.
I think this has got potential to be one of the most authentic and real initiatives we've brought to our students to engage with them in, and I'm looking forward to that.
Alright, so first we started with session 1, and that was about neuroplasticity and just an overview of M3.
There's a couple of different components to what we're trying to achieve with the training. One is to introduce them to the M3 concepts.
And really focusing on the growth mindset and how do we make that change and what challenges do we face every day.
Each of us shared something different, but Kiana underlined that learning happens at different paces, and we just thought that that was a really important realization because we made the connection that lots of kids, like if they notice that one of their peers or a lot of their peers understand something faster than they do, that they can kind of get discouraged and not want to try and get it.
The youth are incredibly capable of putting this in their own words, taking their own perspective on it, which is a unique perspective.
Anyone has the ability to grow and change if they're given the right environment and given the ability to change, because that's not always present in certain situations, but that's really what we're working on here, that so every student has an equal opportunity to really succeed.
We will count through back and forth like 1, 2, 3. So I'll say 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3.
At the trainings, they're both experiencing what it is like to be a learner in the advisories that they're going to be teaching, as well as to be a facilitator.
This section is pretty much about introduction to metacognition and basic brain tasks.
Saying, all right, let's bring it together. It's a great, great thing. But also, that's something that the teachers in the room are there to help with also. So if...
We're going to do a starter activity, and I'm sure you guys remember this. It's the drawing how you think your brain is formatted or works in a metaphorical way.
And what we're doing in all of these sessions is trying to increase our ability to shift towards that growth mindset.
Start
with a lower expectation that you gradually move up so it's not all at once hitting you.
Once you've read, one person is going to share their observations, what impacted them most, maybe a personal example they thought of, and then you're both going to talk together.
It's really important that they take ownership of the material. There's aspects of it that can't change. I mean, the science is the science. But if they take ownership around how it's being delivered and how they're engaging their peers to understand the knowledge and to learn about the concepts, then the more ownership they have of it, the greater that their passion and their understanding about it is going to come through when they facilitate, and that's going to engage their peers.
They were preparing in my room yesterday, and just to give a sense of time, I think you worked most of the hour. And then you met again today for your 15 minutes, and you guys left the room and you were really working intently. So I imagine you know, that's a lot of time, and that's what it takes often to be as tight as I think we recognize you were.
Need a medium.
Small,
Yes,
medium,
yes,
large,
yes.
or
No,
large. All right, guys, be ready. To maximize the impact of M3, it is necessary to have a deep and authentic partnership between youth and adults.
So what stood out for you and how you think that the growth mindset can be implemented in proficiency-based learning in the classroom?
What are their goals? What's the purpose? What are they trying to accomplish with their work? So that all of the teachers have an understanding of what's being taught in these advisories and can help to reinforce those ideas in their own teaching.
What happens at the end, but like what was the effort that went in? And just because you're putting a lot of effort in doesn't mean that you're not a natural and that everyone has to put effort in.
And that begins to shift the role. And this is where it connects to the personalized learning, proficiency-based learning, because now you can really elevate the role of students in their education. They can take on much more of a partnership with their teachers, and it becomes something that is a shared responsibility of each, the learner and the teacher.
Does anybody have any ideas or thoughts about how they could maybe take a student's fixed mindset and at least move it towards the growth edge?
If you just plumb counted the number of times you hear somebody say sorry, I try to discourage that because you shouldn't be sorry for making an error.
Really important, and we emphasize that making mistakes and making errors isn't something that you should feel bad for or be sorry for. Instead, it's something that you should celebrate because it means you're learning. And
At the end of each lesson, they're given homework, which is basically just to think about a concept for the week that will be asked. So maybe ask students throughout the week if they're thinking about that concept or noticing those concepts. It's real simple, super simple.
I think it's going to help the teachers to understand what exactly M3 is and how we're going to move forward from here so they can help us in the classrooms.
We have 3 left over there. Let's do a couple in the front of the room. Okay.
The core of the M3 initiative are the peer-taught advisory sessions.
Does it have the activity where you're clapping? Yeah, it's in here.
They're partnering with their adult advisors. They're collaborating, working together. But for those 30 to 45 minutes, the youth are leading the learning.
I see a math problem that I've never done before. I have a growth mindset because I really like math. That's just me personally. So I say, hey, I've never seen this before, but I want to work through it.
I think the students that led our M3 had the M3 experience.
I think as facilitators, we learned a lot in terms of the teaching process or the facilitating process, and we took a lot away from the material, and depending on the group of students that we had, I think some definitely absorbed some of that material as well, which was pretty nice.
If I practice more, I'll succeed next time.
Boom. Excellent. You had 2 awesome words in there, practice and succeed. We love those words. This is great.
I think it was a positive and a negative that it was students teaching. In some ways it was better because it wasn't like in the like constricting classroom setting, and it wasn't like someone just talking at you. It was like one of your friends or peers, but that also could work against us.
Yeah.
Because then they don't always take it
didn't really take it
seriously.
seriously.
Yeah.
So it depended on the situation.
The stuff that is so valuable from M3 and from that Make It Stick book is the stuff about learning how to learn. And that can be integrated into any classroom.
Students' view of how learning does happen, you know, the whole idea of you keep working at it and you'll get there, and it's okay to fail and it's okay to struggle. I think the culture has shifted on that.
Whether they're joking or not, growth mindset is like a big thing that a lot of people say. And even if they're like kind of trying to joke around, they're remembering it, which I think is something to know.
So instead of saying 1 now, you're gonna clap. So 2, 3, 3, 2, 3. Wait. Yep. So there you go. You can. Yes. Yes, we messed up. Okay, and now you guys can try that out.
Yeah, the idea of a positive attitude towards challenges and anything you might come across in your life I think that stuck out because it was continually reiterated through each session, like your perception of yourself and the way you face issues kind of has a really huge impact.
So it's really good. That should be your goal for next week.
The 2 student leaders, they would talk to me about how hard it was to teach. But really their one in particular, the confidence level was just, you could see it improving.
So during this session, we're going to talk about stereotypes because stereotypes can really influence our mindset, and there's a lot of stereotypes around intelligence.
I think certainly having like a growth mindset and approaching a situation with a more positive attitude certainly helps in terms of understanding something. Like if you just have a negative outlook on it, going into it saying that you're never going to understand it, then, well, you're not going to understand it as much. But at least with a positive outlook, you try to get somewhere with it, I guess.
I think the key word that everyone took out was the yet. You can't do it yet. And I know just periodically, like through my life, like my parents and teachers have like said that just because it's hard now doesn't mean that you can't do it. And so I feel like that was kind of emphasized even more with M3.
You're gonna name your own stereotypes, and we're gonna share some out if you guys are comfortable with that. If not, totally fine. And we're gonna try and reshape that so that we can like really commit to ourselves that we're not gonna think of these stereotypes anymore.
I think a lot of them, they ended up like having good results, because I know in our room anyways, we would do the activity and then we would all have a big conversation and like debrief it, and that was when people kind of like came out of their shells a little bit and got to talking about it more, and then we would have like full-blown discussions, which was really good.
As a queer woman of color, I get stereotyped pretty often, and I sometimes see that in my learning environment, and it affects me. So I think it's different for every person because of how like their ethnicity, how they identify, and like all the range of spectrum, what happens in the personal life as well. So yeah.
Yeah, so we're gonna dig into that today and try to.
But I feel like there was a bunch of lessons in the middle that were good, like the really good ones.
Like the academic strategy.
Yes,
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, that was a good one.
And I also think the not yet stuff was really good, and I think the stress one was really good.
Mia on that side. Yep. Talk as a group, and then I'm gonna ask one of you guys from each group to like say why you chose to be there.
The things I remember most are probably like the study tips. And I think a lot of it I'd kind of heard before, but having it all in like that one lesson. That's like the one lesson that I remember most clearly.
Not just reading something, like maybe taking notes or drawing it away or trying to connect different classes with each other, and I find that helps a lot.
It's just important to keep in mind what you're thinking and what other people are saying, and just keep that in your mind over the next week or so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.